here's my thoughts on Six Underground.
Uh,
Well, it is Sense back here talking about Six Underground, which I saw this week. I am working on seeing a couple shows, a couple other stuff, so I have some other reviews for next week. But this week I see Six Underground because I heard a lot about it, wanted to see what it was about. So here we go. I normally don't talk about the writers or anything, directors, all that various stuff about movies because I like to judge movie by movie itself, not as much by who made it and its legacy and all those connected stuff like that. But I do want to say, after coming out of this movie, I did have to rush to look who wrote it because if you see it, you'd know the writing team. They worked on stuff like Zombieland, worked on Deadpool, worked on G.I. Joe, and so you definitely get it's their type of humor. Like, it's just a lot of jokes, a lot of action, a lot of jokes, a lot of action. Almost everybody's a funny person in these movies. So just to kind of give you that heads up, if you were thinking about that, kind of think of this movie as kind of being Deadpool mashed up with like a Fast and Furious movie, one of the newer Fast and Furious movies. Maybe Hobbs and Shaw put those together. So yeah, definitely R-rated. So like many action movies, I've seen a decent number. Six Underground is a pretty straightforward, simple story. It's saving the world, saving a country, saving some people. There's a dictator, you gotta go stop him. I mean, I don't really try to go anything beyond what's in the trailer, I guess, but that's basically what it's about, a group of people trying to save the world through doing action stunts. And so, in that sense, it's a very straightforward story. They don't tell it in a straightforward way, though. It's a lot of time jumping, a lot of, here we're in this moment, but we're gonna go back 7 months and tell what's happened then, and then we're gonna, from that moment, jump back 4 years and tell what happened then, and then jump forward 3 months and say what happened then, and go back to current time and bounce back and forth. Like, you're never bouncing at the same time. It's always a different time period, but you're bouncing around so much in this movie in the first 30 minutes, you probably get a little bit of a whiplash. There's so much time jumping going on, which made it a little difficult to understand. Some stuff that happened at the beginning, like after I was talking about the movie, I didn't even catch some stuff that happened at the beginning, and then other stuff, I caught it, but it didn't have the impact it would have had if it happened straightforward, because it's so out of order. Some scenes just don't have the same impact it would have if you knew what was led up to what these people were about when you saw them. Which I think is kind of a negative. It did make it kind of intriguing in a way. I feel like it was somewhat of a simple story, so if it was literally just told in a super straightforward event, it would end up being kind of boring, but they kept the editing fast, visuals crazy. It's Michael Bay, there was explosions, there was cars, there was stuff going crazy, so it had a lot of visual interest in that way, so they could have focused more on that instead of all the time jumping, which ended up being kind of tricky. The other thing with the time jumping is you kind of started realizing how unimportant some scenes are when you see them out of context. You don't have the build-up, you don't have the outcome, and then you see the rest of the movie and you're like, well, nothing really came out of that scene to begin with. Like, it may have gone somewhere, but it didn't really. When you see the rest of the movie, it didn't seem to have any importance. Again, keeping it no spoilers. Speaking of action movies, it's definitely an action movie. There's a lot of stuff going crazy. It's also, like I said, R-rated. There's blood, there's explosions, there's body parts flying around, blood splashing across the screen, a lot of people taking a lot of beating, just a lot of general action stuff. Some of it, generally, none of it was too disturbing, in my opinion. It kind of was weird because they were trying to be really funny with it, because, I tell you, the writers, they're generally known for writing a lot of funny stuff. And so sometimes it kind of clashed because it's all funny, it's all jokes, they're treating all this violence as funny and jokes. And you're like, okay, this is gonna be a fun, goofy kind of thing. And then suddenly some of the action, some of the violence is too real, it's too personal, it's too realistic, it's too much the real world. And then you still have your main characters joking, but you're dealing with events that are definitely not anything to be joking about in the real world. So you're just like, you don't know what to do. Do I laugh at this person making a Leave to Beaver joke, or do I look at the fact that, people, let's say like just children that are people like that in danger, like that's not something to just laugh at. So it kind of had a little bit of issue with that. Also, in my opinion, I have an issue with almost all the characters being in funny situations. I think it kind of works better when you have more of if you want to have serious villains and serious threats and serious stuff in your story, you should treat them seriously as much as you can. When you have scenes where they're not as funny, but you're like, but this is the same person who just nuked the whole town. Like, not saying there was nukes or anything, but just saying, this is the person who just did this a moment ago. Now we're seeing them bumbling and doing some jokes around this. It's like, this doesn't work, doesn't connect with you. The audience kind of kicks you out of it a little bit. A little bit of criticism. It definitely had some funny moments, and that definitely hit. And I will talk about that a little bit more when I talk about the characters particularly, but overall, I don't know about that. Like, they were just throwing jokes left and right, a lot of stuff. Some of it hit, some of it didn't. That's all I can say about that. And so, along with the action and the other crazy stuff, they also were, like I said, there was a lot of time jumping, but there's a lot of stuff we're trying to do with just the characters and talking with film language and film stuff. A lot of stuff seemed to be set up that didn't really go anywhere, or they were trying to subvert it, be different about it, not just do it the way you've seen it done 1,000 times, which kind of hurt it to a degree, because some of it just didn't, it falls flat. You don't connect with it because, there's kind of a reason why stuff are done a certain way, people interact a certain way, shots are framed a certain way, and when you show that but then don't have any kind of a payoff, or your payoff is something totally different, it kind of ends up feeling more like the audience feels tricked, or the audience feels let down, or the audience just doesn't. They're like, okay, well, that just happened. I didn't feel anything about it, instead of feeling what you want them to get from the story. Like, some of these characters have some real emotional stuff going on, but you, the audience, oftentimes can feel very easy to check out, laugh at a joke, and just be like, all right, when's the next explosion, or something like that. So, I'm trying to think if there's anything else I can say. I guess not to get into spoilers or anything, but just say generally, it's 6 Underground, and there's supposed to be a certain number of characters in this movie. Definitely, most of them are not important. Not most of them are not important, but only a set number of them are important, honestly. Some of them could literally not be in this movie, and it wouldn't change the movie at all. So that's kind of a conclusion there. To kind of wrap it up, I guess I would rate this movie 2 out of 5, meaning I don't really feel a particular drive to watch it again unless there's specifically a need to. Like, somebody, it's like,
I just really want to watch it, and I'll ruin it if I don't watch it.
I'll watch it with them. I'm not gonna be like never watching it ever. I'm not gonna tell them I hate the movie or anything like that, but didn't see a whole lot of rewatchability in it, honestly. So yeah, that's my general rating of 6 Underground. Now, to talk a little bit more about it, because there's a little bit more to talk about, I guess some positives I would like to say, I guess, but it kind of goes into the slightly spoilery. But so in terms of actual characters, you really focused on, even though it's 6 Underground, there's supposed to be 6 people. 6, doesn't last very long. Characters, number 6. He's interesting, and I felt like they did a pretty good introduction to him really quick. Like, he's a driver, and they actually show him drifting in the city using a drift car brakes, drift stuff like that. Like, I like stuff like that. Some realism to what the characters are doing. He was pretty funny. Just from his interactions, you could build a little bit of a backstory for him. They didn't really go into it at all, but you could build it, so that was interesting. But then there's character 1, who's kind of main character, but basically when the story begins, he's had a whole bunch of stuff happen to start off his adventure, his story arc, his whatever you want to say. So basically, you kind of have to keep having flashbacks, keep going back and back in his life to kind of put together. So in a way, you're just thrown into seeing him do stuff, and there is a little bit of there's a change in him over time. He starts out one way and he's different by the end. It's not super smooth to see that because we have to spend so much time jumping to other points in his life, so it's not a super smooth one. I personally don't know if I 100% buy it, but he does change throughout the movie, so there's that. 2 is honestly somewhat of a, in my opinion, stock Hollywood character. Just a shoot first, ask questions later, I don't need to worry about emotion type lady, so I don't really have much to say about her. Then you have 3, who's honestly kind of more the heart of the movie. They're trying to make 7 the heart, but it's really 3. With his, between showing some of those scenes with his mother and stuff, actually having him interact with people from his life, I think is what really adds to it. Almost nobody else seems to have a family or something to actually interact with, so him having that is like a really big thing. It makes him more of the heart of the movie. And also a lot of humor in the movie, just a lot of situations they put him in, which is great. So honestly, yeah, I'd say most jokes, most stuff I actually laugh about had him involved in some way or the other. So definitely a good one. You had 4, who was another character who he himself was not that interesting, but he just kept putting him in these perilous situations where you just gotta feel like, man, I really want this guy to pull through this thing. Like, we've seen him in all these things. He's gotta make it, hopefully. I mean, the way the movie starts out, they make you think it's gonna be a lot darker of a movie. But then they crack so many jokes that makes you think it's a lighter movie. But then serious stuff happened again, so you think it's a darker movie. But then they keep cracking jokes. So, who knows? But basically, you want him to survive, and he does survive. But there's not a huge backstory to him. He could just be like a bland video game character, honestly. And then you have 5 who may as well have just not existed. And then you got 6 who may as well just not have been there. But I mean, he had a part. And then 7, but he didn't he helped the other characters change, but he himself wasn't too different. Yeah, and he was pretty good. He was pretty serviceable. He showed emotion pretty well. I thought the actor did pretty well. But yeah, that's my review. I'd give it 2 out of 5.